Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for joining Sales Execution Simplified, How Conga and ActionGrid Work Together. I'm Haley Coxon, Senior Marketing Manager at Conga, and your moderator for today. I'm joined by Drew Quinlan, Conga's Vice President of Business Development, and Steve Roche, Founder and General Manager of Conga ActionGrid. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar and will make it available shortly. Please submit any questions in the chat window for Q&A at the end of the webinar. And in addition, we have a special offer for all of today's attendees, so please make sure to stick around for details. With that, I'll turn it over to Drew to get us started.
Hey everybody, welcome to the call and thanks for your interest. It's my goal today to give you a little bit of insight into why we chose to combine the two companies and what we really envision as a powerful combination of tools for you to use. We're still the Conga that you know and love today. We've built our business on a great product and even greater support, which I'm sure most of you have experienced, and we continue to grow tremendously. We are a world-class enterprise-grade document generation platform. We can grab any data from any object within Salesforce and put it into your template and deliver it where you be. However, as we were looking around and when we listened to our customers, we kept hearing the same thing, and that was that our biggest limitation was the fact that the data had to be in Salesforce prior to it being used and grabbed by our tool. So what we did is we looked around for ways to solve that problem. And as we all know, adoption is a huge problem on the Salesforce platform, and the way that we define that isn't really by logins, but it's by how much data is actually entered. So why is this? Because it's easier for reps to have a notebook. Many of them use Excel spreadsheets, and they do that because it's easier to get the data in, and they kind of put the bare minimum into Salesforce, which would limit their ability to use Conga. So that's why we introduced Conga ActionGrid. It's an incredible tool with the premise that Excel is a great tool, and it was essentially rebuilt 100% natively on top of the Force.com platform. And it's just as easy as what the reps are already doing today. But it gives them a huge benefit if they start to use this tool. They're going to get customized, personalized, high-quality sales plays, based on the best practices. Your best reps are already doing this, but they're going to get time back because we've made it easier by eliminating a lot of the administrative tasks. And you're going to get your other reps following the same exact best practices that your top reps are doing. So what does this really look like? You're going to get everybody following a world-class process using a true sales acceleration platform. You're going to get the data in because you're automating administrative tasks. You're going to give your guys more time to sell and many more ways to sell effectively. We're accelerating and improving actions along the entire sales execution continuum, all the way from the opportunity through to cash and then all the way through to upsell as well. So the bottom line is this: the payoff is going to be huge for your reps. If they put the data in, they're going to save time and effort because they're going to get beautiful documents that are going to help them close more deals out of it. Getting that data into Salesforce is huge for management because they can actually track effectively and understand what's going to close and when. And then there's also a huge payoff for your execs. They're going to be able to look back, see the trends, and recognize where to make investments in the business going forward. So now I'd like to pass it back to Haley, who's going to talk about the next portion.
Thank you so much, Drew. All right, we're going to get Steve set up for some live demos in a second here, and he'll take you through just some of the few ways that you can use ActionGrid. It is a very powerful tool for data management as well as increasing your reps' productivity. So, Steve, let's jump right into it. So one big challenge for every sales manager is reviewing their team's pipeline. It's really cumbersome to review each opportunity, click inside each one, look at the notes on that opportunity and get a sense of what's going to happen with that deal inside of Salesforce. What does ActionGrid provide for pipeline management?
Um, awesome. So as you can see here on this screen, this is a traditional, Salesforce list view. And I always say, if you're a CEO or a VP of sales or whatever, and this is how you're starting the month and you're about to review the pipeline, you've got a long day ahead of you, right? Because if you drill into these, there's really nothing that is helping you. There's nothing driving you where you should start. You can kind of do some initial sorting, but it's a tough haul to get a full picture of all this opportunities. Fast forward that to why we built ActionGrid to solve the struggle of the Salesforce list view and related lists. We can replace that experience within just a few clicks of the mouse, and all of a sudden you have this experience. Now, right away you can kind of see something that strikes your eye, a conditional color. If you look at most spreadsheets, you'll see they have some usage of color. Color's driving behavior. We all know what to do when we get to a stoplight. When we see red, we think something's there. We don't know what to do with the yellow, but at least your eye is being drawn to something's going on here with the green, yellow, red, whatever. And in this case, somebody's written a conditional formatting rule, which is my arch enemy as a CEO when ActionGrid was my company, which is the sales guy who thinks he can close a deal in the past. Doesn't keep the data up to date. User adoption is about keeping that data up to date. Garbage in, garbage out. So you can't blame the sales guy because it's so hard. If you count the clicks, it's actually 7 clicks. To get into each opportunity, edit it, update it, save it, back, to get back to the screen, and don't forget to pray that you remember where you were in the list. With ActionGrid, our grids are fully editable, add-in-place grids. Our attention's being called to this dirty data here, and it's as easy as clicking into the box like so. Now, what would you do in Excel? You certainly could do one at a time like that, but you wouldn't do that in Excel. You would lasso that data. Even those little trivial things like checking boxes, that's so old school. We're not going to be doing any of that. So what would you do in Excel? You'd use that fill down command. So we've emulated that same thing here in the action menu where you fill down. You take your cell that you had edited and you fill it down. That's a poor man's mass update. You'll notice the little red caret that indicates that the data's been edited. I like this method because I can save the data, or so I'm ready for my next demo here. I'm just going to revert my change. So I can kind of do an undo. Now, the other thing for a busy sales manager is knowing where to work, and this applies to the sales rep as well, but where should I start my effort? Now, we've got this data sorted. Notice multi-column sorting. So we normally have this data sorted by close dates. You can see them all clustered together, but we can also right-click here, and we can change the order here, as well as some other features that we don't have time for. But you'll notice we're doing multi-column sorting, which is novel to Salesforce. Now, the other thing a sales manager might want to do is group and display that. Use ActionGrid as a reporting tool. So I'm just going to grab this close date, and I'm going to drag it right into this area that says drag a column header and drop it here. Really intuitive to group my data. Now I've got a nice little report, and I can see what's going on in each month. If I wanted to expand that, I can group by the owner as well, and now we can see what's going on in May, and we've got Ryan and Shelly and Steve going on here. You'll notice ActionGrid is always subtotaling, no work to do. When we see money, we know what the most fun thing to do in the world is to count money, so we might as well just do it for you. So no work to do that. If you change your mind and you want to change that grouping around, just slide that over and now focus on the rep. And you say, hey, Ryan, okay, I see what your pipeline is, so super easy to do that. Now, lastly, on the reporting kind of aspects or the tools that can help that busy sales manager, maybe he's really only wanting to look at certain stages or whatever, and our intuitive Excel-like filtering. So we're throwing all of these sort of standard Salesforce things out the window because our premise is Excel is the gold standard of usability. And so we've even implemented that kind of checkbox filtering, and I won't demo that. You can kind of see, you can just check the boxes, rerun your filter. So no extra screens, none of that kind of thing. We throw that all out the window. But it gets better because, what does the manager have to do? He really needs to go into those opportunities to see what's going on. All right, so what are the activities that are going on? Why haven't we been calling this particular guy? If we're trying to close a deal, I'm pretty sure if we don't call, we don't deals. All right, so this is where we show this novel concept of the reading pane, the ActionGrid reading pane. And you can, if you're a Microsoft Outlook user, you can kind of imagine where we get this idea from, is saying, well, what if I could contextually look at the data? Here I'm on this Denver Broncos row, and notice the screen on the right, the reading pane, is showing my related lists. I can see and inspect the tasks that are going on right from that list. So I can even read those notes. So here you see a reading pane within a reading pane, but I'm taking a quick spin through those emails, and there's the emails down here. For real estate purposes, I've put the reading pane down below, but I can just take a quick spin and see what's going on, and then I can coach that sales rep about what I think is going on. Now, we're going to do some coaching, all right, with these sales guys, because you know what? This is kind of making me mad. These red, this is a sales guy, if you work for me and you get the email that says, hey Ryan, I see a lot of red in your queue. Believe me, you do not want to get that email from me. But I'm going to do some action on this because I'm an efficient sales manager. I've got my handy ActionGrid going on here. I'm not going to send individual emails. I just want to take care of all these people on this list that are in the red, and I'm going to do either a batch add chatter. If you're a chatter user, you can chatter and say, hey, people, get on it. If you don't call, you don't close deals. But instead, I'm going to do on this one, I'm just going to do a task. So show you how to do batch adding of tasks. Now, generically, notice the owners of these opportunities are different people. So I'm going to actually choose to assign the task to these different folks, and I'll set that for tomorrow. And then I'll make it a call, and I'll say, get on it, close this deal, or at least make a call, right? So if we say okay to that, it's going to blast out. It created 9 tasks. You can see I had 9 rows selected down there, 9 rows. I'm going to say no to that because we've got our handy dandy ActionGrid, so we can see that the task got created. There it is. Get on it, close the deal, and if I move on to the next one, you just believe me, they're all there. So that's one aspect of ActionGrid.
Wow, Steve, I was watching, and that maybe took you 8 minutes to do all of that, to understand your pipeline and to make sure that the reps were behaving, in a way that was going to drive more activity for deals. And that would have taken somebody clicking in maybe all day. So that's amazing. Now, shifting to the individual sales reps and how we can help save them some time with ActionGrid. Just speaking from personal experience, I know our sales development reps spend most of their day researching before making calls. So they've got a list of prospects that they've got to call, but they need to understand what the last call was or the last email was. And maybe if they've got any activity been going on that wasn't through the sales development rep. And they want to make sure that they're fully informed before they start calling those folks. Is there a faster way to do that with ActionGrid?
Sure, that would be typically like a leads queue or an account queue. You can see here that I've put an ActionGrid multi-tab into place, so I've got everything with one keystroke away. So let's just talk about like a typical leads queue. And here, as you're spinning through your leads queue, of course, these activities are all add in place as well. So if I wanted to make my call, you'll even notice here I've got a telephony integration going on. So we work with all the major click to dial applications, you name it, and we work with it. So, you could, if you have a click to dial application, you can dial right from your leads queue, and then you make your call, and you log your call, and you get the infamous left voicemail, that kind of thing. But you're banging out your calls right here, add in place. You don't have to really leave that screen, and you're on to your next call, and you're editing whatever it is. If you some people do, they'll change that status to first call, second call, third call, that kind of thing. So you can edit all of that data right there in place. But I was watching our Conga sales guys that are managing the leads queue, and they were prepping for this actual webinar. And one of the great benefits of ActionGrid here, just the day-to-day stuff is great, but what about doing something like this where we select all these people, select a group of people, whatever it is, and then we use this ActionGrid is all about actionability, and we don't have time to go through all these awesome actions in ActionGrid, but one of the sales reps' friends is batch email. And this is batch email using Salesforce's standard batch email, but it's brought forward in a more intuitive manner. So I'm going to select all those records. I'm going to choose a Salesforce, out-of-box Salesforce template, email template. It's going to go through the Salesforce API. So all you admins on the line, it's restricted still by Salesforce's rules and security. So you don't, you're really secure to do that. And then we just send off this email like so, and it'll send the email. You can see actually I did that earlier today, so I've reached my limit for the day. But what you can see here is if I switch on over to my Gmail, we can see that there's the standard email that's going to go out for each rep, and it's going to be logged against the activity history just like anything else. You can see there it is, the mass email, web attendee email to do that. So that's just a few of the things that a card carrying sales guy can benefit from.
Great. So far you've showed us 2 examples of using ActionGrid from within a list view or a grid, but personally I think one of the most savvy ways to use ActionGrid for daily productivity improvement is right from within the individual record. Can you show us how that would work?
Absolutely. So again, remember our premise is we're trying to unabashedly get rid of the Salesforce list view, but also the related list, right? If the list view is bad, what about that related list, this thing, right? 10-column limit, no sorting, no editability, no customization by the end user, a really tough experience if you're working down in here. And what you can do, if I told you, you can do this entire grid in 2 clicks of a mouse. We have a wizard that converts all your related lists right into this grid. And so you could have this sort of experience with your activity management, for instance. So, why do we log our calls and log our emails and do all of that good CRM, being a good CRM citizen, right, to use the CRM, but we don't have a way to get it out. Here we're using the reading pane to actually not, read our actual logged activity. Wow, how cool would that be if I could actually spin through here, use all the filtering, so many times you just want to see your emails that are in there. Why not just filter that down to see only my emails, or whatever it is that, there's a reason you logged your calls and you logged your emails. And if all of the ActionGrid love doesn't do it for you and spinning through there, you might want to search through those. So have you ever had that email where you're trying to find the price or what you talked about before? Here with this search, I can just search on this word Super Bowl for my test data, and you'll note that this restricted my list down both on the subject, but notice there's no Super Bowl there in the subject. It actually searched the body of my email. So it's a full, robust search engine using Salesforce's API, actually. All we did is bring it forward into that related list. And I'll show one more if you let me, because down here on the opportunity, if we take a spin down into a particular opportunity, what we want, our vision is to replace every related list. Why wouldn't you? If it only takes 2 clicks, why wouldn't you do something like this so that you can quickly add in place, add different products like this and so forth. And we, of course, respect all of those validation rules and so forth. But here's some other novel things that ActionGrid can do. Say, for instance, you've got, a complex system where you got lots of products, lots of things like this. Consider this sort of approach where you've got all the goodness of an action grid to dial in those products. You're going to filter them down or whatever it is you're going to do. And then you just lasso those bad boys and you do something like batch add. Remember batch adding tasks? Well, we can batch add anything to anything. It's a generic batch add. So here I've listed a list of all products, not the products on this quote, just my entire product price list. And I'm just going to do a quick batch add, and I'll set some quantities of those just so we can distinguish those. Set those to quantity of 50 and click on my line items, and bam, I've got all of those 50 products right there. I mean, how long would that take to do? That would take you, a long time to do in Salesforce.
Absolutely. Price book management and product management, as far as entering new products, is a real big hassle for admins, so that would save a tremendous amount of time. A short pause. We are taking questions through the chat window. I've seen a lot come through. We've got one more use case to demo, and then we'll start tackling those. So keep them coming. Really great questions so far. All right, Steve. So last thing we've got time to show for. I know we've got a lot of existing Conga customers on this webinar, and I'm sure they're really eager to see how ActionGrid and Conga directly integrate and work together. Can you show them an example of a Conga ActionGrid
Yeah.
solution?
So we've had this even before, we were acquired by Conga because Conga is the #1 app on the App Exchange. So you gotta have an integration to Conga to do that. So we integrate with both Conga Composer for a single use case. In a single use case, you're going to see the Conga, if you've already got a Conga button on the top of either your page layout or your list view, ActionGrid can just slurp up that button instantly. It's a couple of clicks to do that. We read all that work that you've already done, so no extra work to do that. So in the case of Composer, you'd send a single invoice, but let's do the cooler thing where we actually select some rows here. And back at our company, this is exactly how we would do our weekly invoicing, is we'd just select all those records from a grid because we wanted that more visual way of selecting the records. And then we just click here and choose the batch invoice. So this one, I love showing this one because this is the poster child of everything awesome that Conga can do. This is actually going to send an email. I'll get it started. So I've got my 8 opportunities selected there. I'm going to start sending those, and then what we'll do is we'll just switch on over to my Gmail again, and this is going to actually send an invoice as an attached PDF, do all kinds of merging, log the task, all of those things that you would really want to happen, and really exercise all of the goodness that Conga can do. So it's a great demo of it. So if I click on over here and refresh my mail, I think they'll start coming in here. Here's my Broncos deal. And you can see this was all merged in with Conga, all of the individual merging, even a PDF, a beautiful looking PDF of the thing grouped by their product families, about as awesome as you can get. And again, we realized that years ago to partner with Conga. Now it's just a natural fit that we hook all of our data and our document generation together. So a great synergy between our two companies.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much. If I can get you to go back to our PowerPoint slide, I do want to tell everyone quickly about the special offer we're running for May. And if you go to there we go. All right, so to take advantage of this, all you need to do is contact your territory manager or sales@congamerge.com. But we are running 2 different promotions through May 31st. If you start a new subscription to either Conga ActionGrid or Conga Composer, it's $250 off that subscription, an annual subscription. And if you start a new subscription for both, it's $500 off. So some great offers for you to take advantage of, and hopefully we've whet your appetite enough in interest in the products today that you'll want to go check them out. Both are available on the Salesforce App Exchange. You can go ahead and install those into your Salesforce instance or your demo org or your dev org or sandbox, wherever you want to put them to start playing around and seeing how they could work with your data. So now it is time for questions. We do have quite a few, so I'm going to start with a few of the simpler ones to get them out of the way. We've got a lot of questions around which editions ActionGrid works with, Steve, specifically Professional Edition and Group Edition. Can you speak to that, please?
Yep. So ActionGrid currently is Professional Edition and above. So it's a
Okay.
Professional Edition and above. It does not support a Group Edition.
Okay. How configurable is ActionGrid? We've got a few questions around custom objects. Obviously, Composer works with custom objects. Can ActionGrid as well?
Absolutely. So, just ActionGrid will read any custom object. This is just an example here where, I remember I said 2 clicks to do something like this. So we've got some custom objects down here on this one, especially the orders table or something like that. And you can replace this related list experience easily with just 2 clicks of the mouse. We just go here to this ActionGrid setup. You can go here. What I always recommend is work from your related list because ActionGrid will learn your custom objects. It'll actually know all the fields and everything. You just press this button. That's your first click. If you got multiple page layouts, there was also a question on there. Does ActionGrid work with record types? Absolutely. You can have mixed record types and so forth. So none of that, restrictions to do that. So you create this related list, and then it's just a matter of dragging that thing onto your page, editing your layout, and just, that I'm not going to count these as the clicks, but if you just take that Visual Force page that was just created, you just drag it right down in there and save it. You'll see that it instantly is going to learn all of your related lists. It's going to actually put those in the exact order that your related lists are, and it's going to remember the column positions and so forth. So it's going to do all of that work for you.
Awesome.
And
So we had a question on cross-object grids, which I think you've just demoed beautifully. It does work with that. And another one on key context. I'm assuming that means primary contact roles. Does ActionGrid work with primary contact and contact roles as far as related lists go?
yeah, absolutely. As far as related, so your related lists are going to be here. Like so. So like Haley said, these, as far as cross objects and roles and so forth, that's going to be your related list, the downwards side. And then your upward side, action grid here, in this case, goes cross object the opposite way. So when we talk about parent objects, you can drill down, or you can drill up, I should say, and go get data from the parent object. In fact, you can go 5 levels up. So your parent, your grandparent, your great grandparent, and your great grandparent. And that adds value, right? Because all of a sudden now, this used to have to be done with a Salesforce formula field. And here, you can now filter off of that, find me only the AFC teams that have an opportunity, since I'm on the opportunity object.
Awesome. What about Lightning? Is ActionGrid Lightning compatible?
ActionGrid is absolutely Lightning compatible. You'll see the look and feel there made it very easy. We were one of the top the 10 first apps to get Lightning certified because all we had to do is change our font style and we are already fit. We're already Visual Force pages. Those pages can fit nicely into the Lightning interface on the record detail, and they fit in the app menu very nicely as well. So fully Lightning certified.
Okay, great. Any limits to columns? I'm assuming that's a number question. Is there a fixed number of columns you can have in a grid?
There is no limit to the columns. So, in list views, you have a 15 column limit, and related lists have a 10 column limit. And we really, I mean, there is some kind of limit, but it's in the hundreds of rows of records. So it's quite substantial. Now, one of the things that's worthwhile to mention is when people start getting ActionGrid, they go hog wild with all of the columns they can put on there. They're free, and so they start putting all these columns. So then one of our customers said, you know what you need is you need that feature from Excel called freeze column, because I have so many columns. I'm going to have not a big enough monitor. So you see here, I freeze my column, and now let me make this artificially narrow. And you can see here that the rest of the columns are scrolling, but again, everything that's good enough for Excel is good enough for us. So we're trying to emulate all of those sort of functionalities.
I hadn't seen that one yet, so I even learned something new today. That's pretty cool. We've got a few questions around embedding the grid within the record. The first being, is that a visual force component? And then, is there any size constraints around that?
So it is a visual first page component. Back to this part of the demo where I dragged. So what the wizard does, the wizard makes the visual force page, okay, and then you just drag that down into the page. And then I think you mean by size, Salesforce out of box defaults the size of visual force pages to 200 pixels, and I always recommend making those a little bit taller. So here we can make that a little bit more reasonable to do with that. So you just drag it in there, and I'm having a screen refresh problem here, but yeah.
We'll take your word for it. What about Service Cloud? Does ActionGrid work with the Service Cloud?
Sure. Yeah. Case management is a great opportunity to use ActionGrid. Here I've got this particular one is set up for a sales rep where he's looking at cases, and we're using again that cross object concept, because the sales rep doesn't own a case, he owns the account, right? And so we put the account owner here, and I think a great use case again for case management is both conditional color, cases that are getting old and aren't meeting your SLA standards, and then also the reading panes. I should mention those reading panes, if you're in edit mode, those reading panes are fully editable too. You can add notes to those things however you like. So we have a lot of case management Service Cloud customers for sure.
Cool. There's a nonprofit discount question, which I can take. Yes, we absolutely offer a nonprofit discount. Contact your territory manager or sales@congamerge.com for specific details on that based on what you'll need. And we've got a few around permissions and around that batch adding task feature that you showed. Trying to find it, but it was basically if the task is owned by another user, is the ability to edit that based on the hierarchy and permissions. So I'm assuming they've got some sort of permissions and hierarchy where managers would be able to add tasks for their people, but not maybe for other departments.
Gotcha. So first and foremost, what you have to understand about ActionGrid is the very first thing to get on the App Exchange, we absolutely have to honor Salesforce security first and foremost. Even though it looks very powerful, you can't do anything in ActionGrid that you can't already do in Salesforce. So if you've got security, hierarchical based security, role-based security, ActionGrid is going to fail just the same way as it would fail if you tried to go into that task manually to do that. I think there was also another question on record type, so it kind of makes sense, and people naturally are going to say, does it honor all that security? And so, when you talk about things like record types, that's a security kind of thing. We fully support record types. So you see here, I'm doing a little add in place, and the record type is NFL. And what are the positions of an NFL guy? Quarterbacks, linebackers. But if I change that record type to something else, like Major League Baseball, Well, the record types are different, okay, and so we're going to honor all of those dependent pick lists, default values, validation rules, triggers, basically anything that all that hard work that you've done at the page layout to enforce your business logic, we have to enforce that too, or we'd be out of business. We can't not honor Salesforce security, and we can't honor all of your business rules. So that's very important to us.
Absolutely. We still have tons of questions pouring in. We'll stay on until we get through as many of them as we can, but we'll be sending out the recording of this, and if we don't get to your question or you can't stay on for long enough for us to get to your question, we'll make sure we reach out individually and make sure that everything is answered. There's a few questions around working from Excel and then into Salesforce. Specifically, can you copy and paste data from Excel into ActionGrid? Is that a feature that's available?
Yeah, so that is a roadmap feature, and in fact, that's how we're going to be implementing. Instead of some of the other tools out there are basically emulating, importing data from Excel. And what we want to do is indeed what that question was about. We want this to be as easy as copying between two spreadsheets. So what we visualize is just the same work that you would do in a spreadsheet. You're going to have to set your columns in the correct order, but we do actually think that we can paste right into this grid and offer an alternate method of importing data. We don't want, as you've probably figured out, we don't want to do things the status quo way. We don't want to do an import wizard or something like that. We want to do it copy and paste, just like the caller or their question asked. So
Yeah,
look for
and
that this summer.
I think it's important to note too that what ActionGrid is really trying to drive is more adoption of Salesforce. So there are other tools out there that allow the data manipulation within Excel and then port it back in, but this is keeping all the activity and all the data in Salesforce and driving that behavior so that you're getting the most out of your investment. Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna spin through a few of these questions. There's a question about I use Financial Force and can we integrate with Financial Force? And we've got a great case study from a Financial Force, Conga, and ActionGrid customer who is claiming tremendous performance improvement with those. The Financial Force tables are native Salesforce, right? So that's the beauty of the design of Financial Force. So we can read those tables just like any other object, and the one thing you should be asking, because all accountants will ask this, does it honor my validation rules and triggers? And absolutely yes. See my previous answer. So for sure on that.
Great.
There was a question on can it do batch editing of notes. The notes object, this little thing here called ActionGrid Explorer, even if you don't have a tab for something, you can always access that. And so the person who asked about notes is just an object, it doesn't really matter. So you can put that note in the reading pane, and you can take a spin through there, put that into edit mode, or maybe you want to batch update those. Same thing. It all works the same. There's no restrictions. As long as you, the current user, have edit rights to that object and to that field, you can use these sorts of tools. Now, a lot of times people will say, I'm scared to death of mass update. No way am I going to let that happen. So ActionGrid, everything has an on-off switch. So if you saw anything here today that scares you, okay, just know that it's got an on-off switch, and that's all done either globally or at the object level. So let's say you say, no way am I going to give sales guys mass update. What you could do is you can turn them all off. Right here, you just go to mass update, and you say, but you know what? I'll be a nice guy. I'll let them mass update the close date field. That's how you'd configure those kind of features. Same with inline editing and all of that. So highly configurable. So that knocks out about 6 different questions on this list. So I thought I'd just knock all those questions out at once.
Yep, and I've got a few more we can knock out quickly. One from partners wanting to get their hands on this so that they can implement. Go to the App Exchange and download it into your dev org and start playing with it, or reach out to your partner contact. If you don't know who that is, you can always reach out to partnerteam@congamerge.com and they will get you to the right SE for your partner account. And then pricing. There seems to be some questions on, is it licensed, is it tabbed? It is license-based pricing. Just like Conga Composer, we have an intro starter pack. It is $21.60 annually, and that comes with up to 10 people in there using ActionGrid. And then the pricing after that is $18 per user per month. And then there was one more pricing question I wanted to give it to you, and I'm trying to find it. Steve, if only part of the users are licensed in ActionGrid, what would it look like for those who are not? What would they see?
Right. So especially on the related list, right? Because if you're just talking about the top level tabs, then you'd use Salesforce Security to hide those tabs from those users. But when you start putting ActionGrid down on the related list, of course, you do need a license. And why wouldn't you? Because why would you keep this out of the hands of people? But if you don't want to do that, you would just it would show up as a whole. It would just show up like this. So you just minimize that particular section, or you'd use record types or other Salesforce security mechanisms to have different versions of that form. And the people, I guess, that you don't like, you'd leave them in the related lists.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. There's also been some confusion around Conga Composer and ActionGrid. They are separate products sold separately. Obviously, we think that they play very well together to improve that sales execution process. But if that's not your use case, we are more than happy to work with you on what makes the most sense for your organization. Um, let's see. We've got a few more we haven't gotten to. There was one around another type of permissions. How does the grid handle record types and columns that are editable for one record type and not for another?
So as you work down on the grid, so as you set the record type, first off, if you do have record types, even if the record type is not on the grid, it will slam itself onto the grid because it'll realize this is a record type situation. And in the case, if this field, let's say, was read-only for that particular record type, the field would indeed go read-only. I don't have an actual demonstration of that, but believe me, or try it, go get the trial and put this down on there. Full record type support. You don't get to play in this business if you don't fully support the record types and all that business logic. So ActionGrid will always respect your field level security, your read-only fields, and in fact, we're planning to do even more down in there because we're going to start to have our own column properties where we can actually override and enhance the Salesforce experience by bringing additional rules and business logic down onto the grid so you could utilize that.
Okay. What about, so you've talked about the validation rules and respecting that in the error message. We've got a question. If we do a bulk update and it doesn't meet the criteria and it would bounce back, like if you were to do that on a single record editing, it would give you an error message. How would that work in ActionGrid?
Yeah, right. So I do have a business rule here on this particular object where if I do a mass update, if I try to set that salary to 0 or to null, I know I've got a business rule that does not allow that. And so I'm going to get an error just like so. The error is going to roll up. Now, if you do, ActionGrid can mass update millions of records. So if you get into that situation, you're not going to have a million rows. It's going to actually email you that list of validation errors, and it'll just throw those errors out. Again, we cannot play in this business. We don't respect your business rules. So we always respect your business rules.
Mm-hmm. And what about custom SQL statements? Can you use those to extend available data in related lists?
It is possible for sure. In fact, that example I showed with the products, the batch products was an example of a custom SOQL. So that's probably coming from a partner. Very interesting conversations that we can have with the more sophisticated use cases where you want to change the style sheets, put in custom SOQL. It is indeed, the underlying engine is indeed SOQL. So you can actually get quite clever with those kind of things. You can also see here in this example, anyone who's interested, we've got a whole white paper on doing disconnected related lists. So again, because it is just SOQL, here you can see there's no relationship between the Denver Broncos and these other teams. I'm actually doing a disconnected related list, or in this case, I'm passing an AFC West into here to get this with a SOQL statement, or I'm using a grandchild table. Here I'm going down to opportunity products, which is 2 objects away, but I'm able to actually navigate those relationships. And there's some great synergies there between Conga and ActionGrid because they both are tapping into that underlying richness of the Salesforce SOQL platform, basically. So
Okay, a few questions on reporting from the Salesforce side. Will ActionGrid break any reports tied to custom objects or dashboards? And then can we export from the ActionGrid similar to how you would be able to export from a Salesforce report?
Gotcha. So just to be clear, ActionGrid is not replacing reports or has anything to do with reports. So I personally, having run a decent sized business and using Salesforce for many years, I have never, ever in my life run a Salesforce report because I've got ActionGrid. Why would I? Those are 2 separate topics. So we would never break anything because we're just completely independent of that. So, we'd encourage you to, of course, switch out your reports and use a more actionable thing because, right, the nature of that question was, can it export to Excel? Because that's about the only thing a Salesforce report can do is export to Excel, whereas an Action Grid has all of these actionability things. Once you get your report, you want to do something with it, batch add or batch edit or export to Excel, just like the question. So you export to Excel, and you're going to get, a perfect rendition. It opened up in my other monitor, but yeah, that's exporting the selected rows to Excel. There's some other neat options as well. You can, print to a PDF. If you really want all the conditional color and everything, you can print that to a PDF as well, and that's going to be the perfect rendition of the particular grid by printing that to an Excel.
All
Um, I,
right,
Haley, I see one that I'm dying to answer,
go
which
for
is
it.
people always ask, hey, you say you're Excel-like, do you have Excel formulas? And so we came back from Dreamforce and somebody, people were challenging us, you can't say you're Excel-like unless you support formulas. And so Action Grid, of course, does support formulas. And so let's say you had a situation where all the iPhone 5s quoted need to be updated. What you could do here is you can use a little feature of Action Grid called Drill Down, where I drill down to all the products of all of those opportunities with one click. I'll just do it for a few right here, the yellow ones. And we do a quick drill down to the opportunity products, and then we could see all the iPhones or whatever it is. And let's just say we use a formula. So you access these formulas here, pretty intuitive, and let's just say we're going to increase the price of those iPhones. Or maybe decrease, whatever. So we'll do a quick formula column price increase, like so. We know that's going to be a currency column, and what we're going to do is we're just going to get the sales price, and we're going to double the price just because I'll be able to see the math there. Okay, so now we've got our price, right? So that's our quick formula field. Now, what could you do with formulas, right? So if I just sort these things by my iPhone, well, let's change the iPhone 6s because there's more of those. So you select that data. Now, what's the price of the iPhone right here? So we've got the price increase would double this guy, right? So that's what we're going to get is a doubling of our sales price right here. So the clever thing about formulas is now we're going to be the first tool ever that is going to provide an action to mass update with a formula. So if I'm going to change that price, I'm going to use my formula here, set my price increase, and update that. Now remember, they were 300 and 750. Now they're 1500. So that is going to rock the world of product management, price book management, upgrading your prices or whatever. You can use that formula and formula mass update however you like. So very, very powerful.
Okay, we've got a few more integration questions. One around Marketo. Can the bulk email integrate with Marketo and other mass email tools other than the Salesforce
Yes.
API?
In fact, we do that with what we call a custom action. We haven't baked the Marketo and the par.engage into those, but you can see here I've already got the par.engage one installed. I just don't have Marketo, but what benefit of the acquisition is they're Marketo users here at Conga, so we have actually done a custom action. So what I mean by that is if there's a button or there's a list view button or a regular page layout button, it can be converted into this menu in what we call a custom action. And so you'll see things like batch SMS with an integration to SMS Magic, batch mark. I don't remember what the one-off Marketo product is called, but it's the equivalent of par.engage, which is a supplemental product to Salesforce's Pardot product that allows a salesperson to access those email templates. And they're still restrained by daily limits and so forth, so there's a lot of security around those. But I don't know who invented what first, if Marketo did it first and then Pardot came along with the same product or the opposite. But we do have a Marketo custom action that you can apply into this send email menu.
Great. We're getting towards the ends. Do grids count against your Apex code limits?
Yeah, so the grids themselves, they are going to make API calls, so they're going to count against those limits. The tabs, if you put the tabs, of course, you're going to have tab limits, but you can be clever with your tabs. This is where ActionGrid's going to really help you with your 25 max tabs if you're an enterprise edition or something like that. You can use these sub tabs, so you can greatly save on your usage of tabs. Now, of course, on related lists, those don't count towards anything. Those don't count towards any of your limits to do that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great. What about dashboards and forecasts? Anything that ActionGrid can enhance there, such as using a custom field other than the amount field for forecasting along different business lines?
I might have to take that one a little bit offline because I don't quite understand it, but the dashboard part I understand. In your regular Salesforce dashboard, you've got that, out of box, you've got that task. Why not use ActionGrid as a nice dashboard element? Because Salesforce dashboards support visual force pages. So here, I've put my tasks right there front and center on my dashboard and my leads and maybe my won opportunities this year. So, both that comment, we're all about doing a grid solution, well, until later this summer when we actually add charting and pivot table kind of technology. But for right now, we're more of the detail behind that. So you'd use your traditional Salesforce dashboard elements and reports to do that, and then you'd have the detail down here as actionable action grids.
Excellent. Can you drag and drop line items between groups as a way of setting and updating the group value of the dropped items? So I think they were looking to see how you add columns to these grids.
Okay, if that, the way you add columns to the grids, I think that's what the question was. So when we add columns to the grids, we can just do so here all on the same screen with this little wizard to do that. That's how we add related lists as well, by the way. So you don't really drag drop them on there. You just click the boxes, but you can drag drop the fields around. So all the fields are drag droppable, or if that's a word, sorry, but those are all drag drop. if that was the question. I think it was something around can you mass update as that method, and I probably have to take that one offline to understand it a little bit more. But most of our updating of the data, you don't drag a field on top of another. You basically do this concept, and then you'd lasso that, and use the fill down commands to update that data. I hope that kind of gets close.
Okay. Um, there are a few people still on the line who were curious about the more non-sales use cases. So we briefly hit upon case management, but do you have any examples of a non-sales user using ActionGrid?
Yeah, I think data is data, right? So you should be able to apply this anywhere. Now, I don't always have tabs for this, but let's talk about, something similar to like a financial force user. So if I have some invoice data in here, I don't have a tab, so I'm going to be using Action Grid Explorer for this. So how would somebody in accounting use this, or manufacturing use this? So they might have all of their invoices, and they want to, do a quick report here and say, this, I probably don't have any this year data, but if I do last year's um, invoices, and then maybe I want to use my reading pane to inspect those invoices, so I quickly add my related list of my invoice detail on there. So I've got myself, what is that, 3 or 4 clicks to get a pretty productive use. Now I'm spinning through those. I can even use my arrow key to spin right through those and inspect those particular invoices. So that's one use. We have a lot of manufacturing customers, people that have rich data. They're using their CRM as an XRM. They're really embracing the Salesforce platform. That's who are really gaining the benefit of Action Grid because they have a lot of data in there, and it doesn't really matter what the data is. We've seen people managing airplanes, and the center of their world is an airplane, and then there's all these custom objects off the side with a lot of rich data. The maintenance of that airplane and the multiple people that are involved in the airplane, the pilots and the owners and the maintenance crew and all of that kind of stuff. So the harder your Salesforce system is, the more custom objects, the more use cases for Action Grid, I think.
Okay. We're down to 2 questions, so thanks everyone who's still holding on the line. I know we've had a lot of questions. Do you integrate with Wave Analytics?
Well, we would be more of the data engine. So Wave Analytics is more of what we call a BI tool, the business intelligence tool, and it's going to be doing much harder stuff. We think that our niche is more of the what can a Joe salesperson, Joe sales manager uh, do with the data. More of a think of us as sort of the Excel, maybe graduating into the Excel pivot table, whereas Wave Analytics is more of the sophisticated data analytics, where you're really, it takes some time to create all that infrastructure. We're more of an on-the-fly tool.
Awesome. What about Salesforce One? Is ActionGrid mobile friendly?
It is mobile friendly. We're Salesforce One certified as well. If you're looking at a grid on a phone, it gets a little tight, but it works real nice on an iPad. But I still use my phone to all of my accounting data is in Salesforce, and so I view that data via my phone. The problem with Salesforce One, you can't turn the phone on its side. So what I do typically from my phone is when I'm looking at gridded data, I use my regular Chrome browser to do that. But if you have a related list or something like that, it'll show up inside of Salesforce One for sure.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. We've gone quite a bit over with all the awesome, excellent questions. If we've missed any of your questions, we apologize. We're sending out the recording. Please reach out to your territory manager or or respond to that recorded webinar email, and we will make sure to get any outstanding questions answered for you. So thanks, Steve, again for joining and demoing and answering everyone's questions. I think that about does it.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye. Holy cow.